Welcome back, folks, to part 6 of our Unit on Natural Selection in the AP Biology curriculum. In this section, we're going to be going over Extinction, which is 7.11, and Continuing Evolution, which is 7.8 in the AP Biology curriculum. And readings, if you'd like to do any readings to go along with this, that'd be in 25.4 of your book. So first thing here, guys, extinction versus speciation, right? The rise and fall of groups of organisms reflect those differences in speciation rates and extinction rates. If we take a look over here, we've got a common ancestor. This breaks off in these two lineages. Each one of these things here, so this is a phylogenetic tree with the links representing absolute time. So how many million years ago things happened. We can see lots of speciation events here, making new groups and new individuals. But we can also see these little crosses represent extinction. This particular group or species died off. They went extinct. So the rise and fall of groups depends on speciation extinction rates. There's always going to be some new species being formed. There's always probably going to be extinctions happening. If speciations are happening more than extinctions, we get more diversity. If extinctions are happening more than speciation, we get less diversity. Okay? So let's take a look. We're going to look specifically at extinction in this section. One of the big drivers of extinction can be continental drift. You guys are probably familiar with Pangea, that giant supercontinent that was around about 250 million years ago. It had a lot of effects. It got rid of a lot of the shallow seas that were between the continents. So that reduced shallow water habitat and increased deep water habitat. And in the land, the water near land has a lot of moderating effects, right? Brings in a lot of moisture, moderates the temperatures, and that sort of thing. So in the middle of this giant continent, where there wasn't as much water, it got very dry and very cold. This video, guys, you've seen before. You can watch it again if you want, but just kind of a little bit of a reminder on these geologic records.
By studying various fossil records, geologists have put together a geologic record. Evidence in the fossil record of large-scale extinctions and/or enormous radiation of many diverse new life forms defines the main boundaries within the geologic record. As you move through the geologic record, the names and dates will change. Also, a diagram at the upper left will show what is known of the history of continental drift, based on evidence dating from the Mesozoic era. During the Precambrian time, which began at least 4,600 million years ago and ended 542 million years ago, life began on Earth. The first prokaryotic cells and cyanobacteria appeared, as well as the first animals. The beginning of the Paleozoic era, 542 million years ago, marked the origin of most modern animal phyla. The first plants, jawless fish, bony fish, and amphibians evolved. Amphibians became the dominant vertebrate life form, while the first reptiles and seed plants appeared. By the end of the era, 251 million years ago, many marine and terrestrial organisms had become extinct. The Mesozoic era stretched from 251 million to 65 million years ago. At the beginning of this era, the reptiles radiated out as dinosaurs to dominate the landscape, along with the cone-bearing plants, or gymnosperms. At the same time, the first birds and mammals originated. As the climate and Earth's surface changed, flowering plants appeared and many organisms, including most dinosaurs, became extinct.
The Cenozoic era followed the Mesozoic, 65 million years ago, and continues through modern times. The beginning of the era saw the radiation of the mammals, birds, and pollinating insects such as bees and butterflies. The angiosperms evolved to dominate the landscape as most modern mammalian orders appeared. The primate groups evolved, leading to the origin of ape-like human ancestors, and finally humans.
So continental drift has many effects on living organisms. What do you think those effects could be? Pause it if you need more time to think about it, but continent's climate's definitely going to change as it moves, right? It's going to go farther north or it's going to go farther south, which is going to have a drastic effect on the climate and even part of it. It's going to definitely affect the weather patterns, right? Some areas are going to get very hot, some are going to get very dry, some are going to get very wet. So a lot of changes there, not just due to north and south, but ocean currents and all those other things. You can also get separation of land masses, which is like perfect allopatric speciation, right? There's going to be no genetic flow between two populations as continents drift apart. So this is allopatric speciation, large scale, not one side of a mountain range or another on an island somewhere. This is big speciation. And this has happened many times over the course of Earth's geological history. And just a reminder, we saw this map before, and we can see how the similarity of fossils in parts of South America and Africa kind of show where these continents were formerly attached, and the fact that when they split, we don't see African lions in South America and in Africa, just in Africa. There was different selective pressures in each of these, so we get different things. All right, so extinctions are always happening, speciations are always happening, but you're probably familiar with like mass extinctions. Okay, so the fossil record does show that most species that have ever lived are now extinct. By far, most species that have ever lived are now extinct. And it can be caused by changes to a species' environment, most obviously, whether that is changes to the abiotic parts of it, continental drift, all that kind of stuff, temperature, water, all that things, or changes to the environment in the biotic part of it, so new predators, new prey, new species to compete with, all that kind of stuff. So at times, the rate of extinction has increased dramatically and caused what we call mass extinctions, which tend to happen during disruptive global environmental changes. So not just a localized change, but global change or global stress. Huge impact, can make it way more difficult for organisms to survive. Probably one of the biggest episodes of mass extinction as far as percent of the population that went extinct was in the Permian extinction. You don't even know that it was 250 million years ago, about the same time as Pangea was breaking up and stuff. Huge amounts of volcanic activity, which released tremendous amounts of carbon dioxide in the air. All that carbon dioxide then led to like a 6-degree increase in temperature, which led to a whole raft of environmental changes and a whole raft of extinctions, massive amounts. And then you're probably even more familiar with the Cretaceous extinction 65.5 million years ago. That's the ones that killed the dinosaurs, that we think was likely the result of a meteor impact, which may have also triggered volcanic eruptions. So it might have been a combination of the two there. But those would be examples of mass extinctions. Massive global environmental change in a very short period of time can cause mass extinctions. There have been 5 big ones. We can see them here in red. Some of the more recent ones are the biggest ones. Like here's the Permian, here's the Cretaceous. You can see some of these other ones, how long ago they were. And you can also track with that in blue the diversity of the species, or the number of families, so diversity of species here in that graph. So you can see as extinction rates go up, diversity goes down in these cases. Here's where we lost all the dinosaurs except for birds, for instance. That begs the question, is a 6th mass extinction underway? We call that a, what do we call that? Human-caused extinction. Anthropoid extinction, because humans cause it. Scientists estimate that the current rate of extinction is 100 to 1,000 times the typical background rate. So the current rate of extinction, as best we can estimate, because we don't know all the species that are out there, and we can't track all the ones that are going extinct. We don't even know they're out there. It's pretty bad. A lot of extinction going on. We can also see on this thing here where we map those mass extinction rates and what the general what was happening to the temperatures. Most mass extinctions have tended to happen when temperatures have gotten warmer, and that's what we've got going on right now. So the data does suggest that a 6th human-caused mass extinction is likely to occur if it's not already underway, which is very disheartening. Very disheartening. Makes me want to cry. Anyway, so consequences of mass extinctions. Mass extinctions can alter ecological communities and the niches available to organisms. Can you tell me why or how that might be the case? Pause the video and think about it. Yeah, so you've got mass extinctions. You can wipe out whole groups and whole populations in different areas, which is going to open up new niches um, to competition. If nobody else is eating termites because anteaters are hogging all the termites because they're so good at it, if anteaters go extinct, now all of a sudden there's food just sitting there in the ground, easy pickings for other things to try to exploit. And so you're probably going to have some competition for that food source now, and that's going to drive some evolution uh, to better take advantage of that. Um, so you get when you do have mass extinctions, you have openings in the niches, um, and you get a lot of changes happening. After mass extinctions, the estimates are it can take anywhere from 5 to 100 million years for diversity to recover. So if we are undergoing a mass extinction now, or we're starting to, it will take millions of years for Earth to recover from that. Um, and humans have only been around for, I mean, even if you count like Neanderthals and stuff, like 500,000 years. But if you don't count Neanderthals, you just count humans and what we've caused here. We've only caused it in the last probably 2 to 3 thousand years that we started having much of an impact on ecology. So it's just nuts. Lineages with novel and advantageous features can be lost during mass extinctions. So, there's a lot of random chance on what mutations happen. Um, and sometimes we can get some amazing uh, new variations and leading to new lineages and new types of organisms that in mass extinction events just wipes them out. Okay. And then you got genetic drift happening and all that kind of stuff. So by eliminating so many species, mass extinctions can pave the way for adaptive radiations. What do you think adaptive radiation means? Kind of already hit on this a little bit when I was talking about niches, but let's take a look. So adaptive radiation is the rapid evolution of diversely adapted species from a common ancestor. So you have one common ancestor, and all of a sudden, you radiate out from that point and you adapt to lots of different things. Okay, so adaptive radiations may follow mass extinctions. Why? Right, because it was extremely difficult to survive. So we've jacked up the natural selection part of natural selection. So only the best of the best make it. And then there's likely to be new niches available to them. And there's likely to be new space available to them. Places that are not, there's nobody there right now. So you wander around looking for food and you find a place where there's no competition. Any individual mutation is more likely to spread to the whole population very quickly. All those things that happen when we talked about small populations and bottlenecks and things like that can then take over, and all of a sudden, just new things happen, and you've got all these new open niches. So we see a lot of that. There have been some worldwide adaptive radiations. The mammalian one was pretty big. There weren't very many mammals around when dinosaurs were still around. We were all fairly similar, pretty much all nocturnal, all fairly small, likely because we were getting outcompeted by the dinosaurs because the dinosaurs were hugely diverse. But after the dinosaurs went extinct, there wasn't anybody filling those upper level niches, and mammals were able to make it through, and then they filled them. And now we've got mammals that look all sorts of different ways and do all sorts of different things, whereas before we're all fairly rodent-like for the most part. Okay. What is even more common, happens all the time, is regional adaptive radiations. Prime example is Hawaii. So when new organisms colonize environments with little competition. So when the islands were forming, or are forming, because they're still forming, there was no life on them. So a little bit of life gets there, no competition for available resources, lots of different niches to fill, and so we get adaptive radiation going nuts. So we find all sorts of organisms on the Hawaiian Islands that aren't found anywhere else because they're like 3,000 plus miles from the nearest other thing, I think. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's insane. So here's a statement that I'd like you to explain. The amount of diversity in an ecosystem can be determined by the rate of speciation and the rate of extinction. So how much diversity there is, number of different types of organisms, can be determined if you know the rate of speciation and the rate of extinction. Explain that for me. Pause it and think. Yeah. If you want a little bit of a refresher now, here is this graph we showed before, right? So here we can see the amount of diversity. And if diversity is going up, that means there's speciation happening, right? Because we're getting new species. And when diversity is going down, that means we have extinction is outpacing speciation. Okay? Like you see this area where it's fairly level, that's where the extinction rate and the speciation rate is about the same. You see here extinction, it was pretty straight level. So extinction and speciation rate was about the same. Here, extinction rate was way more than speciation. All through here, we had a long time with relatively low extinction and high speciation. Lots of diversity developing in that time. Okay, so that was the extinction part. Continuing evolution, we're going to keep it pretty simple here, guys, for AP Bio. Has life on Earth stopped evolving? No. We don't live in some special and unique time where life does no longer evolves. How do we know that? You can see a lot of examples of it. We can track genomic changes over time in current species, so we can see, especially with short-lived species, we can see how they have changed over, just a few years. We can see that change in the fossil record. It hasn't really slowed down any. We can look at evolving resistance in antibiotics, pesticides and herbicides, new pathogens evolving to cause emergent diseases like COVID and things like that. So we're seeing it all over the place, guys. It hasn't stopped. None of the underlying things necessary for evolution have stopped. We still have mutations. We still have variations in population. We still have sexual reproduction. We still have a struggle to survive in most species. In fact, probably increasing due to human interference, causing a possible anthropomorphic mass extinction on the horizon and climate change. So if we have not caused the end of evolution, if anything, it's stronger than ever. All right, at this point, guys, please discuss the concept checks on 25.4, number 2 on page 538. And if you haven't already done so, do the topic questions for 7.11 and 7.8. I'll see you back in class and we'll talk about them there.